Hi, my name is Kevin Snyder of Snyder Law, and I'm a estate planning and elder law planning attorney in Irvine, California, and I help families plan to protect what matters most to them, their loved ones, their legacy, and their dignity. And on today's short video, I want to share with you a quick tip as a result of some things that we've been seeing recently of some other people in the community going through when it comes to reassessing Prop 13 base value and having a trust and moving a home into a trust, and what can happen in certain circumstances and what you can do to be proactive to make sure that you don't fall into this trap that we have seen. I'll give you an example. A husband and wife creates a revocable living trust, and they use a creative name because they want to be anonymous with their trust. They call it the ABC Trust, and they transfer their home, the home that they live in, into the ABC Trust. They file all the paperwork they're supposed to with the county recorder's office and the county assessor's office, only to months later receive a notice from the assessor's office that they're going to reassess the Prop 13 base value of their home because it looks to the assessor that they had transferred it to a third party and not themselves. And now the husband and wife are dealing with having to battle the assessor's office and their incorrect reassessment of their property. And in the meantime, going through that process, they have to pay the new higher level of property tax. So what's the problem here, and how can we avoid it? The problem here is that when you transfer real property in California under Prop 13, it triggers a reassessment of the property taxes. The property taxes are tied to the assessed value of the property. And so we want to keep the assessed value at the original value of the property when you purchased it, as best you can. Now, there's some things that can be done to reassess the property over time. If you've made improvements on your home, made additions or redone your backyard, there could be some increased value that the assessor's office can use to reassess your property taxes. On an annual basis, your property taxes can be increased up to 2%, and that's the law. But in addition to that, the other way that property is reassessed is on a transfer, if you give property away to somebody else. But if you're giving property from yourself to your trust, then that is what we call an exempt transfer. You can do that without triggering a reassessment. The problem comes in that the assessor's office doesn't always know that a revocable trust is tied to you, especially in a situation where there's an anonymous name or a creative name of a trust, and it's not a trust that's named Mr. and Mrs. Smith's Revocable Trust, and then it might be clear that, oh, this revocable trust belongs to the original owners, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, so we already know that that's an exempt transfer. But if it's Mr. and Mrs. Smith to the ABC Trust, the assessor's office, without additional information, may assume that that's just like Mr. and Mrs. Smith selling the property to somebody else, thus triggering a reassessment of the Prop 13 base value. So that's what's happening. What you can do to avoid that is file the correct paperwork with the assessor's office initially when you're making that transfer, and if you're working with a good estate planning attorney, they'll assist you with that. In addition, making sure that you're following up with the assessor's office if they need additional information, even beyond those forms. If they're going to need some more information about the trust to ensure that the ABC Trust does have Mr. and Smith on it as trustees, and it really is an exempt transfer. You want to be timely in that. You don't just want that to lag, because the assessor's office at any given time could just simply reassess if they think you're taking too long in getting back to them in their reply. Once the property is reassessed, then the avenues that you have are to go through an administrative hearing process, which could take months or years. And in the meantime, you're on the hook for paying that new reassessed value of property taxes. If in the end, if you're victorious, that you can get a reimbursement, but in the meantime, in order not to default on your taxes, you're going to have to pay the higher tax. And in certain situations, this could be a significant jump. So you're not going to want to get there. If you are transferring property not to yourself but to others, like to a child or a parent, fortunately you're in luck, because those are also exempt transfers. There are exempt transfers beyond just to yourself, such as to a child or a parent of yours, or if a child transfers property to you. Those are all exempt transfers, and they're for your primary residence, or it could be for an additional property that you own up to an assessed value of $1 million. So there's some opportunities here. But just note that if you are a grandparent, you cannot just transfer property to a grandchild. There is not a grandparent-grandchild exemption if their parent is still alive. If their parent is not alive, you can transfer property to a grandchild. There's an exemption for that. See, it gets tricky, right? So you're going to want to get that information of what kind of transfers you can make without triggering a Prop 13 reassessment before you actually do the transfer. So consult with an estate planning attorney in your area, consult with a real estate attorney in your area in order to get fully informed and get some assistance on how to do it correctly. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. You can put them in the feed here. You can contact us at 949-333-3702, or if you'd like to schedule some time with me for a brief call, you can do so by calling my office or going to www.asksnyderlaw.com, and you can schedule some time on my calendar, and happy to try to help you out. So hopefully this little nugget was valuable to you, and when it comes to making transfers and not falling into the Prop 13 reassessment trap that some people do, and I hope that I can provide some help if I can. Again, my name is Kevin Snyder of Snyder Law. I'm an estate planning and elder law planning attorney in Irvine, and I help families protect what matters most to them, their loved ones, their legacy, and their dignity through unique estate planning solutions and some solutions like this, and being proactive and being mindful of what the rules are. Okay, hope you have a great day and a great week, everyone. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.